Hi, Sacha. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
I'm excited. I'm going to learn a lot from you. I know it. I always say this is it's kind of a selfish endeavor as much as it's for the listeners. I always take away a lot. And we always start with the question of how do you, Sacha, keep yourself well?
That's a deep question. Lots and lots of things. So I think that's probably gonna take the full time. But I over the years have integrated lots of little practices into that. And for me, it's just been adding on little by little to slowly get better. So for myself, it's a lot of breath work, yoga, lots of different type of movement and lots of mindset. And one of my favorite things is I'm always learning and I'm always trying to expand my knowledge base. So yeah.
I love that. Encompasses kind of the mental, physical, maybe spiritual as well with yoga and breath work and all of those things. And I think that's a really well said. Kind of started small and added layers on, like started with maybe simple habits and snowballed from there. I think it can be really overwhelming for people to try to make positive change because it feels like you have to 180 everything all at once. Was
Exactly.
was there kind of a specific area within those habits that you started with? Like, was it first exercise and then breath work, or was there something that you kind of conquered first as an anchor habit for yourself?
It really started with exercise. It started about 2015 that I really began this journey, and I was not in a good space. I was drinking myself to death and just had a lot of bad habits. I was in really bad shape, and I ended up signing up for Krav Maga, which is like mixed martial arts kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with it. And it was the first time I had really committed myself to something really hard, but I absolutely loved. And that was really the catalyst for where I am right now. If I look back, I think that's probably the time.
Okay, that's amazing. So I don't know much about Krav Maga as a martial art, but I do jujitsu. How does the system work? Like, is it a belt system? Are
Nice.
you working for promotions?
There are some styles and some that have belts. This particular school, Krav Maga Regina, we just kind of go up to there's beginner, intermediate, advanced, and you just learn more and more as you go. But it incorporates lots of things. So we do spend some time rolling, doing jujitsu. You do lots of different modalities that are included. So it's meant to be practical and for self-defense. So you learn edge defense against knives, guns, that kind of stuff. But I also like the stress drills that you do are incredibly challenging, but I also find them fun. So that's for me, it was finding that balance of fun when you're training and something that you can kind of just lose time doing. You're not self-conscious. And that when you cultivate those things, it tends to be really powerful for your self-development.
I feel like this is a really common story that I hear where, especially if maybe someone was struggling with addictive behaviors, like if you were drinking too much. I don't know if you would classify it that way, so not to put that on you,
I,
but
I certainly was. No, I'll be the first person to say.
I find a lot of that. Like martial arts is just something you can really put yourself into, and it builds a natural community. And like you said, get into that flow state, which I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this because I've always said that to me, jujitsu and yoga get me into the same flow state, which sounds, I think, so funny to people because they seem so different at surface level, but it's just that same type of focus, lack of distraction, need to control the breath, in very different ways. But did it build a community for you as well, moving into martial arts?
Yeah, I've met lots of amazing people through there, and yeah, it's a great community, but it really was just that discipline and finding something I loved that was healthy for me. That was a real stepping stone for me, right? But yeah, as I've moved into yoga, that's really been the community that I've kind of expanded into, and I'm running lots of events and stuff now, and it's just one of my favorite things in the world to facilitate these things. So
Good for you. Do you still practice martial arts?
yeah, so I practice Krav Maga twice a week, and it's kind of funny because I am a yoga instructor, and like you said, they do seem on opposite ends of the spectrum, but I think you should have both skills, right? Like I'm very confident I'm not a violent person, but if I had to use those skills, I'm certainly glad I would have them.
Mhm.
There's the there's the age old thing. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war,
I was gonna
right?
say
And
it,
just
literally was gonna say it before. Yeah. Well, and I think you take skills from both, like it just crosses over into everything. So are you not drinking at all now, or what has your journey with alcohol been like?
I haven't in a while. I wouldn't say that I'm never going to drink again. I never really made that decision at any point. But over years, I just cultivated a much less unhealthy relationship with it. Uh, the less I drank, though, the less I wanted to drink, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
I would just the less I drank, the more I would notice how bad my mental health was even after 2 or 3 drinks. And I would notice that for a couple days after, where my mental health just spiraled. My body didn't feel good. There was lots of little things. So not I wouldn't say that I'm never going to again, and things may change, but right now it just hasn't been calling to me. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Good for
So
you. I'm so happy to hear that. Well, and I find too, if you get into something like a regular yoga or martial arts practice, or even just going to the gym every day, it gives you a reason to not want to wake up hungover and, dragging and feeling like crap. Like that gives you that purpose to wake up feeling good. And I really appreciate what you said, because I think once that baseline starts to shift, like you don't recognize how crappy you felt every day till you start to feel better. I think that's with nutrition, with movement, with alcohol. I'm a ketogenic nutritionist and I see it with my clients all the time. People didn't realize how bad they felt because that was just their baseline of every day until, they start feeling a little better and realizing like, oh, I can wake up clear-headed and, not lethargic and all of those things. So that's amazing. I'm glad you've been able to find, a healthy place with that. And so how did you move into yoga, and what was your journey into
oh, I
becoming?
lost you.
Oh, sorry. I can hear you. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry. I was just saying how I would love to know what your journey to finding yoga was. How did you originally become introduced to yoga, and how did you become a practitioner and an instructor yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably 20 years ago, I think I was still in my teens probably. My sister's actually a yoga instructor as well, and she's about 9 years older than me. And she didn't live in Regina at the time. She came back to visit and she's like, "Oh, I'd like to teach you a little bit of yoga." And okay, sounds good. And we went to a park and did a little bit of yoga, and I had zero interest in it, but it probably planted a seed. But I would just remember, I'm like, this is for hippies, I'm not into it. Like, yeah, moving on. And a couple of years after that, I started going to hot yoga classes here and there with a friend of mine. And I remember going in there just thinking, yeah, I'm just going to stretch a bit. It'll be fine. And just getting my ass kicked, excuse my language, and realizing I'm like, oh, there's more to this than just stretching and being flexible. Like it encompasses everything. And that's when I started to kind of get into yoga, but it wasn't consistent. And then, so this will be a little bit long-winded, but
Good.
I actually in 2016, some friends of mine asked me to sign up for a Tough Mudder, which is like a 10-mile obstacle course race. And I hadn't done any running, anything like that. I was just kind of doing Krav Maga, going to the gym, but not still in the shape I wanted to be. So I ended up just saying yes, signed up for that. It was one of the most empowering experiences of my life. I lost a bunch of weight, got in really good shape. But shortly after that, I was running and I hurt my knee. And that was my cue that I'm like, okay, you're doing all these hard things on your body. You need to start balancing it out and do some other stuff to restore and rejuvenate your body. So then I started just 5 or 10 minutes every day of just light yoga stretching. I found this app called Down Dog, and you can just choose how long you wanted to do your yoga. So I was like, okay, 5 minutes a day, I'll do that. That escalated into about 40 minutes a day, and then it's kind of escalated from there.
Wow, I'm literally want to write this app down because I am in the currently like 10 to 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And first of all, this comes back to, I think, how you introduced, the habits that you use to keep yourself well, that it was just, start small and it grows, right? Like you don't have to commit to doing an hour of yoga every day. Start with a few minutes and it snowballs and it's still so effective. Did you find it increase the speed of your recovery for your knee injury doing yoga regularly?
Yeah, it was a huge help, and that started to make me feel a little bit physically better and balancing that out a bit more. And then if you've done much yoga, what you find out as you go deeper into it is there's just a lot more behind the physical. So the poses are kind of the just the tip of the iceberg. And then that's when I really started connecting my breath with the practice. And that really led me to breath work, because when I do yoga now, my practice is really connected with the breath, which helps me stay present. And that really led me to be where I am right now. So
Well, what's the quote? Yoga without breathing is just stretching.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't
exactly.
know if you believe, but I've heard that in classes before. That's really incredible. And I think that your original maybe bias towards hot yoga, having not experienced it, thinking it was just going to be, maybe like a little fluffy, only for hippies, I'm just going to be there to stretch. It's humbling. And I think too, I would
Yeah.
love for you to talk about different styles of yoga. Obviously, you started in, hot yoga and then doing yoga at home by the sounds of it. It hurts my heart when, not that I'm like anywhere near as consistent of a practitioner as you, but I still feel very passionately about it. And it hurts my heart when someone says like, I hate yoga. Yoga's not for me. I could never. I'm like, well, you just haven't found the right style or the right instructor, like the spectrum. Oh,
I lost you again. I don't know if you can
sorry.
hear me.
Brief freeze. Yeah, I can hear you. I'm so sorry. Just give it 1 second. Oh, sorry, Sasha.
It's all good. That's what editing's for.
There we go. Yes, my poor editor. Should probably really be grateful if I just stayed in Canada.
Yeah.
Just talking about the spectrum of yoga, like you said, the poses are just one component, but even with that, there's such a wide array of styles and speeds. So would you briefly talk about kind of the different styles of yoga and what is your approach to yoga now as a practitioner and instructor?
Yeah, and that's like what you're saying just rings so true, because I've seen lots of memes of it, and it's like if you think that you don't like yoga, just try a different style, right? And because there's something for everyone. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of different styles of the physical yoga. So the asana, which is what we tend to associate with yoga, which is all the poses and the physical stuff. But then you get into pranayama or breath work, which is a whole different niche of yoga. There's meditation, and there's also even just principles of how to live that are incorporated in it, right? So there's 8 limbs of yoga. The first two are yamas and niyamas, which are basically just ways to live your life. And they talk about non-harming, non-attachment, lots of things like that. So there's a whole bunch of levels. The physical yoga, I really like vinyasa, which is just moving, connecting breath with movement. And you can do, I teach a hot calming flow, which I really like. It's just lots of mobility and lots of deep connection with breath. And I also like teaching power classes, like core classes or a power flow that's really hard. That kind of speaks to my warrior side when that does the martial arts and stuff, where I challenge myself. But I also teach a lot of yin yoga too, which is incredibly slow. You hold the poses for 5 minutes, give or take, and it's this deep release of the myofascial tissue. So,
And really mentally and physically challenging in different ways. I think yin, maybe that sounds easy. I find yin much more mentally challenging and uncomfortable, and I still do it. I know I need it as, for mind and body, but I think the flow sounds maybe more difficult, but the yin is equally as humbling in different ways. So how did you end up making the choice to become a yoga instructor? And I would love to know about that journey, because I know it took you on a big trip.
yeah. So in 2019, I started an online yoga teacher training just with no intentions to teach. I just wanted to learn more and kind of deepen my own practice. And it took me about a year to finish. So I ended up finishing it in the summer of 2020. And I hadn't really thought a ton about teaching. And then the day after I finished, a friend reached out to me and asked if I wanted to teach at his gym. And so I said, you know what? I'm teaching a class to my friends this week. I'll let you know how it goes. And I taught a class for my friends and they loved it. And I'm like, all right, let's do the thing. So
Good for you.
yeah, so that's how it kind of started. And for the next 2 years, I actually only taught yin yoga. I was pretty self-conscious that my practice wasn't where I wanted it to be to teach more active roles, and I just wasn't quite there yet. So that's what kind of got me into it, and I was doing it evenings and weekends, and I started to realize how much I loved it and began to change and cultivate my life to make a little more space to do that and have a regular practice where I could start to do that. So
Wow. What did that
I
look like? What were you doing professionally at the time?
I was actually a finance manager at a car dealership, which is fairly it's a fairly high intensity job. It's busy. There's lots of pressure. You're in sales, and there's lots going on there. I loved the dealership. Like, the people there were always amazing, but sales, I began to realize that I wanted to be doing something good for the world, and sales isn't necessarily always doing, the best thing in the world. So I actually ended up switching to a role as a service advisor at the dealership, which was Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, because when you're in sales, sometimes you get stuck 2 hours late, and I couldn't commit to teaching classes. So I actually went into service to do that, which was the most crazy, stressful job I've ever had in my life, which was a good thing.
Oh, that was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It led me to kind of how this all culminated in September of 2022. I was working about 50 hours a week at the dealership. I was teaching 5 or 6 yoga classes a week in the evenings. And then I also signed up for 100-hour vinyasa style teacher training at a local studio, and just completely overwhelmed myself to my breaking point because I just had too much going on that month. The last day of the teacher training, we were all just sitting there and chatting, and it just popped into my head. I'm like, I think I'm going to quit my job on Monday, and I think I'm going to go to Peru and do some more training and just go a little bit deeper. And they're like, oh, okay, haha. And then I just put in my notice on Monday and booked a ticket and found a teacher training there. And then I went and did a 200-hour intensive in Peru in the Sacred Valley. So that was
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
So do you feel like had you kind of hit burnout, or it was just this like clarity of it was time to make this decision? You'd been building up the turning point.
Oh, I hit all of the burnout. I actually went to a yoga class, and the entire class, my brain was just not there. There was too much going on, and I was like, I was getting angry, and I literally left the class and felt like I wanted to cry in my car. It was the weirdest thing for myself. And I kind of just had a moment where I broke, but that became a moment of clarity that I wanted to focus my energy and all my skills on something that I loved and something that was good for the world. And I was just like, all right, you're at the point in your life, it's do or die. So I just did the thing.
Wow. How old were you at that time?
I would have been 36, turning 37. So
I think that's so cool because people are so scared at any age to make that like 180, change the life path, change the plan. But it sounds like if you didn't, I don't know, you weren't going to survive the path that you were on. I hate to say it, but I think that is so inspiring for people to hear. Like there's just no age at which you can't reinvent yourself. Like that's still so young. So why Peru? Was that something that just popped in your head, or had you been like ruminating on Peru? Because I think Peru sounds maybe surprising. People would think maybe like India or Bali or something is often common for like intensive trainings.
I don't remember when it got in my head. So one thing that I do as part of my mindset and goal setting is I have a mirror and I put sticky notes on the mirror with different goals on them. And whenever I accomplish a goal, I take it down and crumple it up, put it into a little thing, and then potentially have a releasing ceremony or whatever when the little glass bowl's full or whatever I want to do with it. But I had a couple of years earlier put that I wanted to do my 200-hour in Peru for, I can't remember why it got in my head, but that just popped in there. And so I had that on my mirror for a couple of years and then kind of gave up on it and threw it out and started over and didn't think about it for a while. And then just in that one moment, it popped into my head. I'm like, no, I'm just going to do it.
Yes.
So.
And not second guess it, like a gut feeling where you just went for it. So how long from that decision? So that was on a weekend and you quit your job on a Monday.
I gave them notice. I had worked for the place for a long time, and how I am as a person, I didn't want to leave them
Yeah.
out
If
high
you
and
give your
dry. So I
notice,
did give them 2 weeks.
yeah.
Yeah.
But immediately. And then when did you book the ticket? Same day.
So I think it was October 3rd October 2nd of 2022 that I uh, made the decision, and I left on October 27th is when my plane flew out. So it was about 3 weeks between making that decision. I just did
Wow.
the thing.
You're coming up on your
It
Peru
was,
anniversary. Well, when did you, so then
yeah.
how long were you in Peru?
I was there for just over a month. I flew in October and came back early December. So I got a little bit of time to travel after the training, which was nice to travel around and do some touristy stuff. And one thing that I'll say is it was scary as hell, up until the moment I put my notice in. I was really, really conflicted and didn't feel great. And as soon as I put my notice in with my work, it was like weight just came off my shoulders and I just knew that it was the thing.
Oh, what a good feeling. That's reaffirming. I think that's so common. I talk about this frequently, in life and with clients. The certainty of staying in a stressful role, like you were in the most stressful job you'd been in, but in a stressful role where you can predict what every day is going to be like, often seems less scary than the decision of just going into something that's unknown, and I think that ruminating on making that decision often really paralyzes people. So I love that you were able to just commit to it. And then what was the experience like in terms of the daily training? Because I imagine that's a really intense experience for a month.
It was amazing. The one challenge is it was in the Sacred Valley, which is 9,000 feet elevation. So doing an intense physical training there was really hard for the first week. It took me a little bit of time to adjust to the altitude. But the training, you would get up 6 o'clock. So one of the facilitators actually played flute. So he'd walk around outside our places and play flute to wake you up at 6 in the morning, or sorry, I guess 5:30. You had to be at the Maloka at 6 for we'd sit, and the first half an hour was meditation, and it was just a sitting meditation. So you just sit there for half an hour and do nothing. It was excruciating for the first week. And after that, it actually started getting really easy to just sit for half an hour. And it's crazy how fast that can change. So then you'd sit for half an hour. We'd do a 90-minute practice. We'd go for breakfast. After breakfast, we do some lectures and they talk about history and philosophy of yoga. We do that for a couple hours, do lunch, and then afternoon was normally practice of some sort and working on poses and sequences. And then you'd do dinner, and the evening was generally some sort of ceremony. And that was one of the things that I really loved and was not expecting to love at all or to be part of that training. But they did a ton of ceremony. We really connected with the culture in South America, and it was one of my favorite parts about the training that I did not see coming. I thought it was all going to be poses and stuff, and it was all the other stuff that really made me fall in love with it.
Wow. Well, like you said, the lifestyle that kind of embodies and encompasses yoga, everything that goes so much farther beyond just the poses. Was it mentally and emotionally challenging for you, especially kind of coming out of that burnout, or did it just feel like exactly where you needed to be and what you were supposed to be doing?
It felt really good. I connected with a lot of amazing people there, and the facilitators were great. The space was amazing. It was just beautiful, and I really connect with the mountains now. I'd never spent any time in the mountains at altitude, but it was just so beautiful there. But they it was really intense and really hard, but it felt easy because I was learning and doing stuff I love. And I kind of knew that I love doing these trainings. I've done lots of trainings before and after, and I just I get really passionate about absorbing as much as I can and learning that stuff, especially when it's something I'm interested in. We did have a day off once every 4 days. Our fifth day would be a day off. And those days, for sure, you were burnt out. And some people did little excursions, and there was a group of us, and we just chilled and had really slow days and did nothing. So it was a nice little balance.
Oh, that sounds perfect. Well, and then giving yourself that time to travel afterwards. Wow, what an experience. I've often thought about doing my yoga teacher training, but I don't actually want to teach. I just would want to do it for myself. And I think it's such an incredible challenge, and to do it somewhere else and see a different culture. What kind of ceremonies were they doing in Peru? I'm so curious about that.
So the whole training was based around the Andean medicine wheel. So we got to work with that a lot, which was beautiful. And the ceremonies we did, there was a whole bunch of different ones. So we did a sound healing one night, which was my first experience with sound and was a really, really powerful experience. I am I'm a very logical and skeptical person, which doesn't necessarily jive with everyone in the yoga community. But as I've gotten into this, I've started to have experiences that I can't exactly explain. And that sound healing was probably my first one where I really was like, okay, there's something else going on here. Um, I at the end of this, it was like a 2 hour sound bath, and I just felt relaxed and good. And then I had this really, really strong vision of a female ancestor coming to visit me at the end. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, I'm going to text my mom and make sure grandma's okay, make sure she's okay. Like, I just had this weird feeling. And she's like, oh, yeah, everything's good. But then I get a text from my dad that my aunt had passed away that day. And it was just such a weird synchronicity. I'm like, okay, maybe there's some more things here that I can't quite understand or wrap my head around.
Wow, how powerful. Well, and just being open to it, I often wonder, and we've had like psychic mediums on the podcast, and I often wonder how much we're just resistant and closed off to in our normal kind of lives where it's, go, 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 working in sales and not taking even the time and space to kind of open that channel up. How powerful was, can I ask this, was plant medicine part of this? I feel like that sounds like something that would happen in Peru.
It wasn't. One of our facilitators actually did facilitate ayahuasca journeys, and it's something I thought about, but the timing just wasn't right. And everything kind of has to be aligned, in my opinion, for that. So it's something I might experiment with down the road. The retreat center that I was at, they actually facilitate that as well. So there were lots of options, but
Oh,
it just wasn't quite the right space or time.
needed. Oh, that's interesting. Yes, I am curious about it. Definitely not the right space or time for me. I don't think it will be, but I do enjoy hearing about it. But I'm so open to it. I've heard so many just, like life-changing stories from people about their experiences. Would you go back to Peru, or have you been back? I guess it's only, no, this is 2020. It's only 2024. You haven't had much time.
Yeah, I was really lucky. I got to basically do that, and then I spent the year starting to develop my business and I did some more traveling that year. So I got to go visit my sister in in Quebec. I got to go to Florida for a family wedding, and I was able to go to Denver to visit my brother there and see Red Rocks. So I got to do a whole bunch of traveling that year. But then now it's time to sit down and make some money, and actually, you can only live that life so long unless you're independently wealthy. So, and I'm not there yet.
Yet. Did you see a show at Red Rocks?
Yeah, I did. I saw Dirty Heads. They're one of my favorite bands, and
Oh,
it was my favorite show I've ever been to by far.
oh,
So
cool. That's a bucket list for me. I still haven't been, but I get their emails actually, and I'm like always checking out who's playing. So how awesome. So talk to us about how you started to build your own brand and build your business, and where breathwork has come into this, because I know you said that was something that you started really taking away from this and is a big emphasis for you now.
yeah, breath work has, like, if anyone that's been to my yoga classes, I am very, very focused on cueing breath, and it's just a big part of how I teach and also how I practice. And that's, as teachers, you end up integrating your particular style into everything, right? So that's really important to me when I teach yoga. But I had started doing some Wim Hof breathing a couple of years prior, and doing it kind of inconsistently, but that was the first time that I really felt the power of prana and energy, and like how you can really change your state of being by just breathing. And I was like, oh, this is a new thing. You almost get like this natural high from it, but it has so much more as you study it. It can really help heal your body, release trauma. It can change how you deal with anxiety. What I'm focusing on right now is, and sorry, I'll backtrack a little bit. One of the reasons that I realized that I wanted to be helping people is when I was working in service, there were just a couple times where we were super stressed out. I was generally able to stay fairly calm throughout, but there's always, only so much a person can do. But there were a couple spaces where I was able to slow people down and help them breathe properly when they were deep in anxiety and have them have this reset. And that made me realize there's a lot of power to this. And even the most foundational and fundamental things of breath work can be so powerful for people who don't know it to really change their lives. So that was one of the reasons I really wanted to dive deeper into it.
Wow. How incredible that you were already practicing this and being a service to others before you had really made this shift. And so are you a breathwork coach?
Yeah, I practiced a lot of different types and a lot of different styles, and I ended up last spring taking a course through Yoga Lap, a gentleman named Michael Beaker. I hope I say his name right. Uh, he's amazing, just really kind soul, and his style of breath work really resonated with me. His approach, and I don't know how much you've seen of breath work on the internet or how much you've watched videos and stuff, but everyone in this industry, and I hope I don't piss people off here, but almost everyone in the breathwork industry, it's almost pitched as a magic pill that you're going to go on this breathwork journey. It's going to unlock all your trauma and everything is going to be good. And you go do it once and everything's better. And he didn't pitch the stuff like that. We talked about trauma a lot in the course, and he's kind of with where I am, where if we have this trauma, we should be taking our time and chipping away, and people should be ready to work through it. And of course, there are people that can take that journey, and maybe that's the last thing or one of the things that help them unlock and release that trauma. But we really, as facilitators, have to be careful about who you're unlocking that trauma and what happens when they're gone. Because if you do a 2-hour breathwork session and you don't see that person afterwards, where's their support network? How are they going to process this? So we have to be really mindful about how we're doing this. And that's one of the things I loved about his style. And absolutely, there's a lot of benefit to doing the rebirthing and the really strong breath work where you do the strong release, but you can also get so much out of the really subtle breath work to calm your nervous system and to just help you process anxiety, PTSD, those kind of things.
I'm thinking of an analogy of like kind of like a micro dose every day of breath work, and then the heroic dose of like the 2-hour thing, which to come at it from a trauma informed place. I mean, even approaching yoga from a trauma informed space, I think can be really important. You just never know. So I love that that's something you're mindful of. And you're also a steel mace flow coach, which I've not ever practiced, but I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of. I feel like it's growing in popularity. So tell us about that and how it works. And is that something you integrate with breathwork? I feel like this is all somehow connected for you.
I am actually working to integrate it with yoga. There are a couple styles out there where you integrate steel mace with yoga, which really is just integrating it with breath and finding out how to connect it with that. So the friend whose gym I started teaching at was actually a steel mace flow gym. His name's Zach. He goes by Frankenlegs. He's a steel mace flow educator, one of the bigger steel mace flow guys in the world. And So I was lucky enough to learn from him, and I trained at their gym for quite a while, and then had the opportunity to teach yoga there, and I have taught a couple steel mace classes at Warrior Flow Fitness. So, but it's amazing. I really love mace because it taps into your creativity while being a crazy hard workout. And as I introduce it to more people and start putting maces into people's hands, I keep seeing that in people at how excited they are of all these things that they're learning. So
Interesting. So you're kind of choreographing as you go. Is that what you mean by the creative piece?
exactly, yeah, you create different flows and put together different movements and different pieces, and there's so many different options. So if people aren't familiar, steel mace flow is basically you're working with a steel mace, which is a long metal shaft with a heavy metal ball at the end. So it's like a medieval weapon, but you're using it as a traditional fitness tool while combining it with like martial arts patterns. And it's really a combination of different modalities of, kind of somewhere between kettlebell training and traditional martial arts forms.
So cool. Well, I was even thinking, I guess I may be thinking of capoeira is more of a like dance flow, but Krav Maga is kind of got like a flowing dancing moving component. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, Krav Maga is just really, really intense and aggressive.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I'm only
So,
thinking capoeira. Okay, I need to brush
yeah,
myself,
yeah,
my
yeah,
martial arts. I was thinking that maybe that flowed well together.
yeah. No,
You've
but
done it
they
all.
do. Yeah, I mean, I've just found stuff that I actually love doing, and that was probably my biggest secret to fitness, because I never loved going to the gym and just lifting weights, which I still do here and there, but that just was never my passion. And the easiest way for me to stay connected with it was to just find something that I loved, that I had a smile on my face the whole time, and that still challenged me.
Yeah. Well, and it just sounds like all of these forms of movements, like you're really in the flow, the whole time. Like when I lift weights, I'm not in the flow state in any way, like when I do yoga or martial arts or, even running. Oh, how awesome. And I love that you're introducing all these different forms of movement to people. And I think just introducing what fitness can look like. I think for so long, in recent years at least, we've really been marketed that fitness has to look and be practiced in a certain way, like the Tough Mudder and, kind of taking a more intense all the time approach. So I love that you've introduced, these kind of like a balanced scale, I feel like, in intensities. And talking about breath work, I think more and more people are becoming aware of the breath. Of course, I mean, there's the viral, YouTube clips that we always see about it. And the James Nestor book, I think, really opened a lot of people's eyes to it. I'm not sure if you've read it. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah, it was awesome.
Huberman going viral with his like 2-to-1 breath. Um, but who can benefit from breath work? Because I think the general public maybe is not implementing it as a daily practice yet. And I think you speaking on kind of these like lesser versions, like the daily practice is really important, where it doesn't have to be the 2-hour trauma release, you're crying and shaking at the end of it that we see on social media.
No,
Oh,
which is,
sorry.
oh, we're back. Yeah, which, and like I said, there is a time and a place for that. I think we really need to change the rhetoric as breathwork facilitators, that we have to be so careful with who and how we're exposing that part to. But yeah, there's, in my opinion, so much power to the basics. And so I've been running 6-week courses. I have a little studio in my garage that I run, just like in person, very intimate. There's up to 8 people and me, courses. And so the idea of 6 weeks is to cultivate a practice. I do introduce them to some stronger breathing, but not anything too crazy, just to kind of give them a taste and understand what that's about. And the most powerful things that my people keep coming back, and the feedback that I get is, one, for them to just start noticing their breath, especially when you're in anxiety or when you're stressed out. Like, notice what your body is doing and notice how your breath is reacting, and then that may make you able to start to facilitate changing that. The two foundational things that I tend to start people out with is, I teach people how to breathe deeper into the diaphragm, which a lot of people tend to struggle and breathe upper chest, which exacerbates anxiety. And it's generally a shallower, faster breath. So the first thing we do is actually a little breath assessment. We practice breathing with the diaphragm and then practice traditional yogic 3-part breath, which is belly, ribs, heart, and then exhaling from the heart, ribs, belly. So kind of like a wave breath in and out. And just practicing how to access your lungs fully and properly is really powerful for people. And then I have them do it 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night. You don't need to do it a lot to start cultivating amazing practices.
Wow. Just like the
And
you haven't
then
started your yoga
the
practice. Oh,
yeah, exactly. And this has also taken me some play to figure out what works for people. And I do throw a lot of things at people when we do the sessions, but I also tell them, I'm like, take what works for you and throw the rest away. Kind of that almost Bruce Lee philosophy where I'm going to give you a whole bunch of different things. And I think I've run, probably 30, 40 people through these sessions now. And people all come back with something a little different that they're able to take out of it.
amazing. And what are some kind of tips and tricks, or maybe even breathwork practices that you could give to our listeners if you're willing? Is there a kind of place that you would recommend
Absolutely.
start?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first step, if you've read that book by James Nestor, like, one of the easiest things that you can do is, one, like I said, just start to pay attention to your breath throughout the day. That's a really foundational thing. And that'll be the first stage to starting to change it. But also trying to only breathe through your nose all the time as much as you can. It's such a basic thing, but it can be very challenging, especially when we're talking and doing other things or when you're exercising. It can be really challenging, but incredibly powerful when you do start to incorporate it with exercise specifically. I've One of the things I'm working on is to work with athletes to help with performance, and even just incorporating nose breathing has been really, really powerful for a lot of people.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
uh, the second thing is that 3-part breathing, and just practicing inhaling through your nose to the belly. And what I do with people is I have them inhale through the nose and almost press their belly out. So they're engaging the muscles and kind of accentuating that motion. It won't be quite natural, but it's just getting the feeling of breathing, expanding into the belly. And then as they exhale, have them blow out of the mouth like they're blowing out birthday candles, and then engage the abdominal muscles again and suck the belly in towards their spine. And that is a really, really foundational movement of just starting to access that deeper diaphragmatic breath, which a lot of people struggle with. And over the years, people have worn really tight pants. We're told to suck in our guts. There's lots and lots of reasons why people struggle to breathe deeper. So those two things are really, really powerful. And if you take nothing else away, that's one of the biggest things that a person can do. And yeah, like I said, like 5 minutes a day is a really great start, right? Just start to build up from there.
And what are the biggest benefits that you see people start to experience? I know you mentioned kind of bringing anxiety down. Why else would we be practicing breath work on a daily basis?
So a lot of a lot of the people that I'm working with right now are working through stress and anxiety, and that is how I'm kind of marketing these particular courses, is to help people that are working through anxiety and stress. And a lot of the people and a lot of the feedback I get from just, they'll text me after testimonials, little moments that they have, is they're starting to take control back of their life. And you're not always going to have control, but when things start to spiral and they start to feel like things are getting out of control, they're able to just start tuning into their body, noticing their breath, and find a quick little reset by just maybe taking a couple of deep breaths. But one of the things is, for our whole lives, we've been told, take a deep breath, right? When you're stressed out, that's the first thing people tell you. Nobody tells us how to take a deep breath properly, though.
Mm.
And so lots of people will come in and I'll say, okay, take a deep breath. What's that look like? And they're like, and it's all up here, which tends to exacerbate anxiety. So even just learning how to take a proper deep breath, or even like the Huberman, the physiological sigh that you were talking about, is one that I teach them. That can be that one, you inhale fully through your nose, take another inhale at the top, and then sigh out the mouth. And that's like a whole nervous system reset in like 3 breaths if things are really starting to spiral out. So these little tools that you can use in the moment to really bring things back to balance, and help people work with anxiety and these different things that they're struggling with.
I love that you say that, in the moment, because I use breath work with my clients. So I'm a certified mindful meditation instructor, which was really based on like Buddhist teaching and has a lot of overlap with the 8 limbs of yoga and non-attachment. And I use breath work with clients to help them give a moment to pause so that they can respond versus react, often when it comes to making decisions with food. And the reason that I recommend the breath is because it is with you wherever you
Mm.
go. It takes 2 seconds. It's free. It's one of those tools that you can always access. So I love that recommendation. This is making me think of the trend of everyone mouth taping so that they can be forced into nose breathing at night. Is this something that you're into? Should we be mouth taping at night?
I have tried it a little bit. I did feel like it was benefiting me, but I ran out and I have not rebought the tapes. So I do probably need to do that. I was thinking about it the other day, but
There's
it did seem to have some benefits. But you also have to be mindful with this stuff. If people have sleep apnea or anything like that, it can be a little bit dicey. So I'd be slightly mindful about how you do it. And but I think it can definitely have some benefits just to have people breathing through their nose more often, and to get better sleep quality.
Okay, that's good advice. Yes, check with your doctor first. I will say that personally, there was nothing more humbling than when I started to only nose breathe when I was running. Didn't realize how inefficient I was. And even still, it's a regular focus, to do that. So it's a practice that comes with time. And I would love to know, how do you feel now with where you're at in your journey, knowing that you're achieving the goal that you had laid out for yourself of wanting to do something that was professionally benefiting other people, and you've really achieved that over the last years?
Um, yes. So it's uh, it's come a long way, and it's really benefited where I am mentally and physically. But I also, like, it's a journey. I tell people when I start these courses, like, when you sit down with somebody that's a meditation guide or, a breathwork coach, like, sometimes people get that guru effect. And I tell people, like, I'm a flawed human being. I'm still working through lots of these things. And I've developed these practices to help me get to where I am and to keep getting better. So and that's what I try to impart on people, is it's a journey. Like, it's lots of ups and downs, and one day is always going to be a little bit different than the others, right? It's not, if you have a bad day, all right, sorry, I should say, if you have a bad moment, don't let it ruin your whole day. Just really look at those things, and bad moments are fine, but don't dwell on things and just keep moving forward and keep improving.
Good for you. You're so humble. You're so humble. You'll never be a cult leader. Not that that was your goal. You know, this is how you stay out of a cult. Make sure that they admit that they're a flawed human. They're not a guru. I think that's great. And, you know, I think that your journey is so relatable to people, and it probably really draws people to you. You know, you have worked the 9 to 5, you've worked kind of in the traditional high intensity job, and have, you know, had found a way to integrate these practices into that life, and can help, you know, guide others through that. What do your friends and family think about your journey? You know, I feel as though you're a very different person in many ways than you may once have been. That's a big change. Do you feel like a different person in many ways?
Yeah, that's always it has been one of the challenging things of I live a completely different life than I did, 5, 10 years ago. And it changes things with some friends, but for the most part, like my good friends, they don't care if I'm drinking or not drinking or on this journey. Like we still connect on so many different levels that it doesn't really matter. And I'm so lucky. Like I have a very very supportive family that's, they've been cheering me on the whole time and always been super supportive. So there obviously are people that have questioned it, and I still remember at one point, when I actually signed up for my initial teacher training, the online one, and a friend of mine's like, "Oh, you don't want to be a yogi, do you?" And I was like, "I don't know, sure. Like if that makes my life better, whatever. Whatever is going to make me the best human being and doing the best thing on this earth is probably the right answer." So
Well, and two, what does, like you said, you know, your original stereotype, although you're, you know, in your teens when you said you know, went to your sister's yoga class and you're like, this is for hippies. I think we still do have those stereotypes about what does being a yogi mean? What does that look like? And I think you have really broken that mold and opened that, you know, path for others in many ways, which is a really beautiful thing. And so you've had a major life shift. And if someone is listening right now thinking, you know, gosh, maybe I need that change too, but can't, you know, give their notice at their job or go to Peru or Nicaragua like me and overhaul everything, what would you tell them?
So I was actually talking about this last night, and I don't know if I read and have listened to a lot of Brene Brown, but I was talking with my guys last night, and it's cultivating a sense of purpose. And if you can't do that in your day job, then find a way to do that, in the evenings and the weekends, and maybe you can start to cultivate it on the side. You can volunteer, you can find something that really makes you feel like you're making a difference in the world. And that can be so powerful for how we see ourselves, is to see we're doing that. But not everyone can do that in their day job. I don't have kids, a family, or anything like that. And not everyone can just peace out and go traveling, right? But lots of people have a lot more responsibilities. So.
Yeah, that's really incredible advice. I try to be very mindful of that when I am presenting things that I am personally doing as well, because I have more freedom and flexibility than most do. Just out of personal curiosity, you know, knowing that you maybe started some of your breath work doing the Wim Hof approach, are you into the cold exposure, cold plunge thing?
Yeah, so I've been doing cold showers in the morning for 3 years now. I started doing it, and the first 6 months was an absolute nightmare. I used to be the person that wouldn't go swimming in a lake because it was too cold. And I had this mental battle with myself every morning for 6 months, where I was like, just get in, do the thing, just get in the shower. You can do this. And then after about 6 months, I was like, okay, I love this. It's actually my favorite thing in the world. You get endorphins, you come out feeling amazing and refreshed and like ready to face the day. And I've been doing that every morning for about 3 years. And I actually, when I was in Peru, I missed the cold showers because the water was lukewarm there. I
I
couldn't
was
get
just,
an actual cold
I say
shower.
it here in Nicaragua all the time. I crave The cold shower. Do you know the guys from Creo in Regina? They've got a new cold plunge company. Adam
I
Small.
didn't know that was actually out of Regina. I've
Oh,
seen that. I actually just shared that they're having a contest right now at a boxing space that's giving away a Creo thing. So
yeah.
I did actually just see them around lately.
I feel like you guys need to hook up because I think they have mouth tape now. Anyways, and they've got the cold plunges and stuff, but I think you guys could do some cool stuff together. Anyways, what's next on the horizon for you?
Right now I do a lot of event planning. So I actually have events planned in Regina through until January, February right now. So we've got a whole bunch of amazing events coming up. I do one of the big ones that I've been doing. We started last summer was we called it Ultimate Healing Experience with my friend Amanda, and she kind of created this. And so it's a 2 hour experience where we were starting with cacao. We kind of that's hit or miss whether we work with cacao or not, but it's generally cacao. We do some like gentle asana yoga. I leads through some breath work, and then we do yin yoga with some Reiki, so that we have Reiki practitioners go around and practice Reiki on people, and then end with a sound bath.
Oh,
So we've been doing those once a month all summer, and they're just amazing. It's one of my favorite things.
oh, I'm so sad I'm not there for that. That sounds incredible. Come do one in Nicaragua. That sounds amazing. And I am so excited to see what's next for you. I'm sad I'm not there to take part. Before you go, I have a few quick rapid fire questions for you. The first being, who is your biggest role model if you consider yourself to have one?
That is a really tough question. Uh, I don't know if I have a particular answer for that. I wish that I had one, and I've actually thought about it because having a guru is such a thing in the yoga community and stuff, but I have taken teachings from so many different people and so many different spaces that I don't know if I can narrow it down to one. Sorry, it's
I
kind of a
think
BS answer, but here
no,
we are.
I think that's powerful. We can say you have a furry friend behind you. We'll put him or her in the list. What's your hello? Your
Yeah.
assistant. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Sorry you cut out there.
Oh, sorry. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I think that there was there was actually a moment when I was thinking about what I needed to do with my life and whether this was the right decision. And my dad actually said to me, like, whatever decision you make will be the right decision. And I think that's powerful that like we just end up on whatever path we need to be on.
I think that's great advice. Best book or resource that you'd recommend to people?
I really like Breathe by James Nestor actually that we spoke about. So I have three that I'll name off here. So that's one of my favorite about breath work. No Mud, No Lotus by Thich Nhat Hanh is I use that a lot. It's lots of little Buddhist philosophy and teaching, but the great part is it's in very short formats. So you can spend 3 to 5 minutes a day just reading, one page or one paragraph and absorb so much powerful philosophy out of it. So I really like that one.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah. And
That's
then, sorry, and The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown, the audiobook or TED Talk. I've re-listened to it a lot, and it's helped me work through a lot of my stuff and just understand where I'm coming from and how to cultivate a more wholehearted and better life.
that's a great list. And personal mantra or words you live by.
That's a great question. I mean, I don't have any particular personal mantra, but really my philosophy is, do as much as you can and keep growing and keep moving forward, but also be easy on yourself and don't forget to have compassion for yourself when you do mess up, because everyone's going to fall off, everyone's going to have hiccups and bumps in the road, but that's just part of the journey, right? It's like I said, we're all flawed humans, we're all just doing the best we can in any moment, so don't beat yourself up too much and just keep moving forward.
Amazing. And last but not least, if people want to learn more about you and what you've got going on, where can they find you?
Yeah, most of my stuff is on Instagram. I'm at Wolfson Wellness, and I'm also on Facebook as well through there. So those are the two best places to find me through social.
Amazing. And we'll link everything with the podcast on the website. Thank you so much, Sacha. I am so excited to move forward and implement some of your teachings, and I can't wait to see what's next for you. And I know everyone listening has learned a lot today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. It was awesome.